It's the Brad and John Show.
You know, John made fun of me in the last segment. By the way, this is the C block of the June 4th, 2025 show, my 90th birthday. Yes, I was born in 1935. John made fun of me about the fact that I don't know how to sell radio properly. But
I did not say that. Go ahead.
I have to tell you that just the other day, I had a meeting, a sales call with a very high-profile company in St. Louis, a very astute media buyer. And after I presented all of my stuff to her.
Wizard of Oz. Give me Wizard of Oz, Brad.
She looked at me and she said,
What would you do with a brain if you had one? What would you do with a brain if you had one?
I'm sorry, John.
At least it's not daily. Last week you gave it to us every day. Now you're skipping days, Brad. That's awesome. It's like talking about asymmetrical warfare. We might not do it every day, but we donate time to it every other day.
Okay. Here's an example of what's wrong with the companies that John invests in, okay? Okay. Here's an example.
They make money. They don't follow the Brad Hildebrand path.
Okay.
They're not melting ice cubes.
Yesterday, and by the way, I ate ice cream in the parking lot at Schnucks last night, but it's a whole nother story. But anyway, a Facebook friend of mine posted a very interesting post that he works in Clayton in one of the fancy schmancy office towers, and there used to be, as he says, there was a Fortune 200 company in their building, but the Fortune 200 company moved. They moved to another building in Clayton.
Yeah, Centene moved, right? Go ahead.
Okay, they moved to another building in Clayton, and the Amazon guy delivered a couple packages to their building and left them in the lobby to the other company.
Who's they?
The Amazon guy.
Your friends, but you said delivered it to their building. Your friend's building or the old Centene location?
No, to my friend's building where this Fortune 200 company used to be. So in other words,
I gotcha. Okay.
Someone shipped it to their old address. Okay.
I gotcha.
So he, as a good Samaritan, says, "I'll call them and tell them that there's stuff down in the lobby and they should come over and pick it up." And his story is pretty funny. He tries to call on the phone, and he can't get a live person on the phone. And he goes through all the phone trees and the whole bit. And finally, his sentence is this funny. He says, "If you're a Fortune 200 company, can't you put somebody on the switchboard for $45,000 a year to answer the phones and talk to people, because of the fact that his thing was, He just gave up. He goes like, okay, so much for them and so much for Amazon. Amazon screwed up, or whoever shipped the stuff to him. And it's to the point where, if you and I talk about this all the time. If you spend money on advertising and you want people to do business with you, but yet they can't do business with you because they can't talk to you. And if they call on the phone, they get, they don't get anywhere. Or if they go on your website and they hit the contact page and there's a stupid form that you fill out that nobody ever responds to, how is that doing business? But John will say, well,
I actually agree with you, Brad. I think that the idea of the point that your friend made about you could have one person on the switchboard, I would be surprised that a company doesn't that a company doesn't do that. Maybe, for whatever reason. I think that it's also easy to forget that there's a whole couple generations of folks that don't want to pick up the phone and call. They'd rather just click on a chat bot and say, "Hey, I work at this address in Clayton. There's packages there. Somebody should pick it up." I agree. It seems inefficient. I would point out, as you know very well, Brad, the company can report that the stuff wasn't delivered properly. And then, Amazon writes it off. Everybody writes it off. And to think that Amazon hasn't worked out the numbers of how much just sending new product would cost versus sending some decrepit man over to pick it up and then carry it the new building. I'm sure they've done that math. But your point's well taken. It seems like an inefficient system, right?
John, the interesting thing is after I go off the air with you, I turn into Joe radio operator and Joe sales guy, okay? And I have clients. I have several clients. I have lots of different clients. And every one of them is different in how they communicate with me. Some clients on this radio station, I have never seen face-to-face, nor have I spoken to them on the phone. It's all on email or text or stuff like that. And if you would draw the continuum, that's on one side. And the other side is the clients who, unless you're sitting across the desk from them in your chair that the visitors would sit in across from the desk from the decision maker, you're not going to sell them anything. And everybody else is somewhere in between. It's a mix. Sometimes you call them on the phone, they talk to you on the phone. Sometimes you go meet them. Sometimes you text them. Sometimes you send them something on Facebook or they reply to something on Facebook and stuff like that. And what you're saying is, and I think you're essentially alluding to the fact that the generations are monolithic, that anybody who's 40 years old is only going to do things this way.
Yeah, that's not at all what I said. Go ahead, Brad.
And I got into a discussion with a friend of mine the other day who was, as a matter of fact, how this started was, if you want to know, this is actually sort of a funny story. This friend of mine was incensed the fact that our president, if you've seen this, it's actually pretty funny. Our president claims to have done an AI video with him doing a Journey song. Have you seen this yet?
Yeah. I thought at first it was Elvis, but it's a rock thing. And Trump himself posted that, right?
Right. And supposedly he claims he did it. And my point was, and this is sort of an interesting story, I related this to my friend of mine, and she vehemently denied what I said. I said it's a generational thing. And I will give you a perfect example. I'm much older than you, John, okay? There was a time with my traffic network business where I was calling on some heavy hitters in the St. Louis area because I was doing business with some big companies in the St. Louis area, okay? And one of them was a cellular company. I'm not going to mention the one because back in the day, there were only 2 cellular companies in St. Louis, but they were both locally operated here. I met with the president of the one cellular company, and he was a real interesting guy, and he was a tech guy, and he did not have a computer in his office, okay? And I was sort of surprised at this because this is when personal computers were really starting to hit big time.
But what kind of a message did it send, Brad?
What kind of a message did it send?
Wasn't that the guy's point that he didn't have a computer there?
Well, no, his point was, and this is interesting, it wasn't the point of a computer, it was the keyboard issue. Because at one point in time I asked him, why don't you have a personal computer in your office? And he says, that gives the wrong image because
you've told this story before, Brad.
People with keyboards are secretaries and support staff. Executives don't touch a keyboard. And I said the same thing to this person. I said, Trump is of that generation that if you ever see him in the White House, he doesn't have a computer on his desk. He doesn't have a keyboard on his desk. He's got a phone. Matter of fact, he's got a couple phones, and he's got his Diet Coke button, which everybody can make fun of. And she throws back at me, and this is sort of interesting, she throws back at me that she doesn't believe that because her mother, who is in her 80s, matter of fact, I think close to 90, a little bit younger than me, her mother is very proficient on multiple formats of computers. She can do an iPad, she can do an IBM PC, she can do an iPhone, she can do an Android, and she's really good at it. Okay, so and the interesting part of this is that my father was the perfect example. My father used to make fun of me. My father was a civil engineer. My father used to make fun of me because he called me the gizmo guy and stuff like that. After my father retired, one day I went up to his house and I was shocked because what's my father doing? Building a computer. And I went out like, what?
Wow.
I will go like, there used to be a company, I don't think they're around anymore, called Tiger Direct when the computer mail order was big. My dad got an account with Tiger Direct and he was buying computer parts. He was building his own computers. And my dad at this point in time was well into his 60s, might have been close to 70. And I was like shocked. I go, Dad, what are you doing? I'm making a computer. I go, why are you doing that? Well, I want to get online. But he was like, this is like 25 years ago when nobody, like the internet was still relatively new. We're talking like late 90s where it wasn't like it is right now with the internet with social media and all that kind of stuff. Matter of fact, social media didn't even exist back then. And his deal was, and this is a sad story of my father, he was trying to research the side of his family he knew nothing about. It's a crazy, weird story. My father, his father left him. My grandfather left my father when he was 2 years old. And when my father, and he never heard from him again until my father was in his early 30s, graduated from Washington
And he was
University.
sitting in an office and somebody came in. And what happened, Brad?
Well, a guy came up to the front desk and says, does Lee Hildebrand work here? And the lady says, yes. And the guy says, tell him his father's in City Hospital and he wants to see him. He's dying. And my father, and the lady comes back and she's all flustered. Lee, some guy just came to the front desk and said your father's in the hospital, he's dying. So my father went to the hospital, gave the name. Sure enough, they gave him a room number. He goes up there, his father, 2 hours later, he dies. So my father was very much into the genealogy. My dad flew to Salt Lake City. You know what the importance of that is?
Let me guess. There's a giant Mormon database.
Yes, exactly. The Mormons are huge at this. The Mormons have all these.
Yeah, I remember this story.
Right. And my dad, and I remember probably a couple months before my father passed away, I went up to his house one day and he was sort of down. And I said, "What's going on, Dad?" And he goes, "Oh, I've reached the end of the line." I thought he was telling me he's going to die tomorrow or something like that.
But that's not what he meant.
He found out that 2 things. His father was an illegal immigrant and dodged the, I guess, I don't know what it was, the CPB or whatever at that point in time, dodged it for the entire life. And he dodged child support. So he never paid child support. And the other bizarre thing my father found out was, and I've talked about this before, John's going to say, well, Brad talked about this on December 13th and January 2nd and February 4th, that his aunt, my great aunt, ran a bar in North City. Fritz's Fine Food on Broadway. It's still there. It's not Fritz's anymore. And his father used to come into the bar and he swore his aunt, essentially his mother's sister, to secrecy. And his father would ask how Lee was doing. And sometimes my father and my grandfather were in the bar at the same time. And they didn't, well, my grandfather knew it because he was watching him, but my father never knew that his father was, 40 feet away from him on the other side of the bar. And this bothered my dad to no end. And I'm thinking to myself, God, it's still, I think about that and I think to myself, God, that's so sad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is.
But what do I know? And the answer to that is nothing. That's what the answer to that is. Okay. We talked about that. Okay. I will say, I'm going to go, and John's going to probably disagree with me on this. I've talked about the pendulum swinging. We go from the weirdo Democrats to the weirdo Republicans. The weirdo Democrats with Biden are the pendulum's way over on the left side, and now we get the Republicans, the weirdo Republicans, and it's way over on the right side. And what does Pete Hegseth come out and say yesterday? Are you familiar with this?
No, what did he say?
They are going to rename several ships in the Navy. And the one they're going to rename right away is, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
The Harvey Milk. Do you know
that name means nothing to me.
You don't know who Harvey Milk is?
No, I have no idea. Who is it?
You don't know your San Francisco history. Harvey Milk was a city commissioner or city council person.
And his last name, M-I-L-K?
M-I-L-K. We would call it, you and I would call him Harvey Milk.
We'd call it Milk. Okay.
We'd call him Harvey Milk. He was a city commissioner, openly gay, and he was assassinated because some guy didn't like the fact he was gay and he was assassinated. And he has been a namesake of the LGBTQI crowd for a long time because he was back in the day. Matter of fact, if I look at it real quick, I think he's been dead like 30 or 40 years now. It's been a long time. There was a play on Broadway about him. I believe there's a movie and stuff like that.
Okay, and so Hegseth wants to take that name off of everything and replace it with something else, you're saying?
There is a Navy vessel called the USS Harvey Milk, and he wants to rename that along with other LGBTQIA names that have been given to Navy ships. And let me bring up the story. His exact quote on this was, which is, and see, once again, I'm thinking to myself, okay, of all the problems we've got in the world, I think this is just, leave it alone. Who cares? It's like to me, it won't bring it up on my phone. To me, it's like, I'll give you a perfect example. In municipalities, you have a facility in a municipality that's named for a mayor. The new mayor comes in and they go, we're not going to call it that old mayor's name. We're going to call it the new mayor's name. That's why I say that if you're going, we shouldn't be naming things after politicians. We should be naming them after veterans who gave up their lives for our country. We should be naming them after Medal of Honor winners. We should be naming it after guys who, jumped on a hand grenade and saved 20 of their comrades. Not Kit Bond, perfect example. We used to have the BFD bridge, the Bernard F. Dickman bridge, which is referred to mostly as the Poplar Street Bridge. And
that's what most people call you, right, Brett?
Yeah, the BFD. And
no, I meant Dick Man. He's a dick, man.
And
by that I mean Richard.
And now it's the what's the thing? Is it the Dave Schatz Bridge? No, it's not the Dave Schatz Bridge. Is it the Tim Brinker Bridge?
It's the Randy Raley Bridge.
It's the Randy Raley Bridge. No, it's the it was the Lacey Clay's father. What was his name? Come on,
Bill Clay. Yeah, there's Bill Clay Sr., Bill Clay Jr., and then Lacey Clay.
It was the William Clay Jr. Bridge, which is now the bridge right now. Nobody knows it for that, and why name it after that? I would rather that it was some Vietnam veteran that once again jumped on a hand grenade and saved his platoon, or some B-17 pilot who miraculously brought back a plane that only had one engine working, and he crashed, and he saved the rest of his crew, but he was killed in the crash. That's what the thing should be named after, not politicians, not mayors, not stuff like that. And once again, the situation is, why name any naval vessel after a politician? Name it after a hero. We did that with, like there was the USS Eisenhower. There's, the people, I think there was a Patton, things named after George Patton, stuff like that. That's who you name it after. You don't name it after some stupid politician. I don't care if he's gay, straight, trisexual, bisexual, quadsexual, whatever. Don't name him after that. Name him after people that really made a difference in our world and rose to the call of duty and gave their ultimate sacrifice, their life. That's what I'm saying, John.
Yeah, I disagree, and I think that Hegseth should name it after Charbonnair, because we all know Charbonnair got robbed when it was changed to Lawson. I think that's something everybody can agree on, Brad.
How about the USS Kinloch? We name it that, right?
Yeah, but if you name it that, Brad would go up there and try to buy
even in St. Louis
property and say, I'm the guy that'll drive through North County to save $5 on a lawnmower.
Even in St. Louis, we used to have the Lambert International Airport. Now they put him to second place. It's now the St. Louis Lambert International Airport. I mean, you know what? He's probably in his grave right now. I used to have my own airport. Now I don't. Look what those people did.
Yeah, I know. He's at that Drury graveyard over there, right? He's spinning at his Drury grave.
By the way, have you got 30 seconds more for this?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Have you heard this super sad story about the two guys in their 70s got arrested and for trying to dig up their grandmother in Washington Park Cemetery?
I did, yeah, but then they ended up being cleared, right? I guess you could dig up a grandma. What were they trying to do? Like get her fillings, or why were they doing that?
No. If you know the whole story of the Washington Park Cemetery,
I don't.
It's very, very sad. It's predominantly black cemetery, and it's gone in ill repair, disrepute, whatever you want to call it. And these two guys, they had 4 members of their family who were buried at the cemetery, and they paid legitimately one of these companies that does this all the time, grave relocation companies. I don't know exactly what they do. They're in the funeral industry, and they paid this company like $28,000 to move these 4 people. Well, they found 3 of them, and they moved them. They got reinterred into another cemetery, but they couldn't find their grandmother. So they too went over to the cemetery and say, well, let's poke around, see if we might be able to find it. And they got arrested by the Berkeley police, and they were both charged with I think they were charged with felonies. And the one guy took a diversion program where essentially he pled no contest and he entered some kind of a stupid program. And the other guy says, no, I'm not doing it. What I did was not wrong. We paid this company. They weren't able to find our grandma. We want our grandma moved. We're going to dig her up and we're going to find her. And they finally dismissed the charges against him. They said, okay, fine, you're cool, which I think was good.
Yeah, that's good for them. And is Drury going to put up a billboard touting that, or is that just not a thing anymore?
They took their billboards down because of Wanda.
Hey, and we can get into that in B Block tomorrow.